This month is National Suicide Prevention Month, and many think this is a conversation that is reserved for older teens, but research shows that these thoughts can start at an early age. And just keep in mind, suicidal thoughts can begin as early as 9 or 10 years old, and many think this conversation is reserved for older teens, but research shows that these thoughts can start at an early age. A lot of young people may not ask for help, but it's important to start that conversation. So I do want to bring in Brandon Tharp, and you are a licensed clinical social worker. Could you just talk a little bit about why it's so important to know these signs at such a young age? Because it is I'm sure pretty shocking to some people at home.
Yes.
that children are having these thoughts of wanting to take their own lives.
It is important to have these conversations at younger ages as much as possible, because some early warning signs is isolation and feeling that you can't talk to somebody about how you're feeling and what's going on. And it's shocking as it is happening where kids as early as 8, 9, 10 are starting to have these thoughts and have these concerns in their lives.
Right. What are some tips for parents? Because I know that sometimes it may be something, a statement. I know you mentioned isolation. What are some statements that some kids may be saying which should ring alarm bells for parents or teachers?
Yeah, so if a child is saying something along the lines of, like, I don't want to be alive anymore, if they're having thoughts of isolating themselves and staying in their rooms more often, not doing what they want to do, and even, I know the idea of like hurting themselves as often, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be suicidal, but it's still something that you want to pay attention to and notice some of these signs that your child is acting differently than what normally they would typically act as.
Right. And I know that, we hear the stories all the time about kids who take their own lives because of bullying, things like that. So also just looking into, what's happening at school outside of the home may be something, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Parents need to be paying attention to this as well, along with teachers, and adults need to be paying attention to how the children are acting and how they're behaving, because that isolation part and being away and feeling like you can't talk to somebody is very important, that we want to try and break that stigma, because it is important to talk about.
Yeah, so how are you as a social worker, what do you all do to try to help these kids that are feeling this way?
So a lot of what we do is we try to meet the kids at where they're at and be there at the schools, be there at the homes, be there in any way we can have a safe conversation to talk with the children. Just because they mention some of these thoughts or some of these behaviors does not mean they're going to be in trouble or anything along those lines. We want them to feel safe. We want them to feel secure about how they're feeling so they can talk, so we can actually try to help them at the end of the day.
Right. And I know that there are a lot of resources for parents and teachers. What are some of those resources for them?
Absolutely. So obviously they can reach out to the Children's Home Society, but they can also reach out to their guidance counselors at their school. And if they're having these thoughts or there's some concerns, they can also call the National Suicide Hotline. It's a 24/7 line. They can call at any time. The number is 988. So it's an easy number. You can just dial on your phone, and someone will answer at any time of the day.
Yeah, that is definitely important to know, because again, there are just children having these thoughts, and I know it's one of the top 3 causes of death for some of these kids.
Yeah. And it's something that we have noticed a lot these past couple of years with COVID and everything, that there are a lot more pressures nowadays on these kids, and we want to make sure we're available for them and make sure that we're available to be able to talk to them and they can feel comfortable, they can feel safe, because there's so much pressure nowadays for these kids as early as 8 and 9, as you were talking about, that we want to make sure we're available for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon, for your time and all of this advice. And again, if you or someone you know may be experiencing signs of depression or self-harm, that National Suicide Prevention Hotline, as Brandon mentioned, is 988. Very easy to remember.